Hello everyone, my name is John, I'm the Geeky Fanboy, and welcome back to me talking about Doctor Who, probably for the last time in the foreseeable future, because Series 14 slash Season 1 has ended, and as is tradition, I think, it's time to rank the episodes and do an overall series overview. Now, obviously, spoilers for every single new episode of the most recent series. I'm just gonna do like a casual ranking of all 8 episodes that we got in the most recent series. And before and after the ranking, I'm just gonna give some general thoughts on the series as a whole, discuss some of my issues with it, and just like a fun little discussion. And if you have any thoughts on the things I'm saying or on those Doctor Who episodes, put them down in the comments below. And now, let's go. So, overall thoughts on the series before we get into the ranking. I thought it was alright. I had a lot of fun with it. Ncuti Gatwa is brilliant. I love him. Already is he one of my favorite doctors? Maybe I should do a doctor ranking at some point. I haven't done that yet. If you want me to do a doctor ranking, put it down in the comments. So I'm having a lot of fun with him. Like, he's basically right in it from the get-go, I think, already, like with the Church on Ruby Road, which was the Christmas episode. We have with him, already enjoyed him a lot in that one, but now, like, with these bunch of episodes, I'm really feeling him as the Doctor. Honestly, he slides right in there, plays him wonderfully, very charismatic and extrovert and big gestures, big smile, big emotions. I know some people complain that, oh, this Doctor is crying so much. I'm like, is that a bad thing? He's just showing emotions. It shows that he's grown as a person, that he's comfortable to show those emotions openly, that he's just a bit more vulnerable maybe than previous incarnations. I honestly think that's alright, and it's great to see, to have especially like male coded Doctor be so emotionally open and to cry and be fine with that and not feel, I don't know, fragile in his masculinity or his gender identity or whatever. It was really, really nice to see. So Ncuti Gatwa, seeing him as a Doctor, honestly great. That was probably the highlight of this series, and his dynamic with like Dr. Sarah with Ruby, with that actress, honestly I thought worked brilliantly as well. I was a little on the fence with Ruby in the first couple of episodes, because like it usually takes me a while to like really vibe with a companion, but there was an episode, and we're going to talk about it, but if you've seen my reviews, you know which one I mean, but there was an episode in this series that made me click with Ruby as a character, and from then on I was really on board with her. I like it that she seems to be a mix of like sort of older companions, you know, like Rose, those times, also like slightly newer companions, you know, thinking of I'm mostly thinking of like Bill and Clara. So like a good mixture of like the old and the new, so to speak. And I think she vibes really, really well with this new incarnation of the Doctor. So like those two characters and their chemistry, definitely the highlight of this series. I just wish the series had spent more time with them, just like as friends, because, and that's going to be one of my biggest critiques later, we don't have that many episodes, and we don't really have that many episodes of them just hanging out and having fun. Like those sort of shenanigans filled kind of episodes that we used to have. There's only really like arguably only one of those episodes really in this series. So I wish this series had spent a little more time just like with them, with the two of them just hanging out, being friends, being cool, so that, you know, the deep connection they have by the end of the series would have been a bit more believable. The fact that Ruby sort of combines old with the new is, I think, a theme that we see here, especially, I mean, since it's Russell T Davies coming back. He ran the show back in 2005, and I was hoping you would bring some new energy to the show, since obviously he's developed since his previous run on the show. But I have to admit that he brings a lot of old stuff, like a lot of 2005 Series 1, Series 2 stuff is in here, like downright to like some of the dialogue, some of the themes, some of the premises, some of the, I think even like costume designs on Ruby reminded me of all the companions. Like there are elements in in some of the episodes where I'm like, okay, we're retreading a lot of old ground that we are already familiar with from, like, I don't know, Ninth Doctor Christopher Eccleston's time, and now we're just repeating that, like sometimes even almost word for word, and I'm not enjoying that at all, because yeah, sure, this series is sort of intended to be like, it's a jump on point for people who are maybe not as familiar with the show, but for people like me who have watched this show for years, um, we know, we recognize the repetition, and we recognize what we're keeping from the old times, what's being repeated, what's being recycled. There's a lot of that, also just like in the general writing and the general vibes and the looks. And I'm not enjoying that, because it's because I did enjoy it in like the 2005, 2006 era, but it's something I don't need anymore now. Like, give me new stuff. That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm watching Doctor Who for. New Doctor, new companion, new series. Give me new things, RTD. I know you can do more. I watched some of your other things after you left Doctor Who. I know you're capable of more, so give me more. Give me different stuff. So I want to keep some of my discussion points for the other half of the video, after we rank some episodes, where I talk about like my main issue that I have with this series, but we're here for ranking. So let's jump into the episode ranking, starting with number 8, Space Babies. Yeah, it's the series opener. Series openers are usually not the strongest episode. Also in RTD's time, there was honestly, in RTD's time, there's only like really one episode, maybe 2 episodes I really enjoy as like series openers. I like Rose. I think Rose is a solid opening. And Smith and Jones is pretty okay as well, but let's say series openers are not Russell T Davies' strong suit, and you can really tell it here. This is arguably one of the shenanigans episodes, but then it was also sort of special because it opens the series. And I'm just not vibing with this one. It just feels off. It had like some lengths in there that I didn't get. The Space Babies just looked awful. Like the babies themselves, the actors, I guess, they look really cute, but like the CGI on the mouth when they talk is so bloody irritating. And then this whole thing with the bogey monster, like the bogeyman, that's disgusting. And I know Doctor Who has done this kind of stuff before, but oh, come on. And I feel like the monster isn't even really dealt with properly. Like, they just sort of leave it there after saving it. And then we get this giant fart in space, and it's this kind of childish, campy humor that I personally do not like. Like, I know it's a children's show, but come on, farts in space. So, yeah, Space Babies number 8. Number 7. The Legend of Ruby Sunday. So this is the first part of our finale, and I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying this is very unnecessarily convoluted, because this episode has like, I feel like 2 or 3 storylines going on that are not really gelling well. Like, they're not getting combined. We're bringing in things that don't really have anything to do with each other. Like, the Doctor comes into unit and is like, hey, there's this woman that's been following me around everywhere. And then the Doctor is suddenly like, yeah, but we also have to talk about this other mystery woman, Ruby's mum. And I'm like, those 2 things have no connections, really. You've not made that clear at all. So we're basically just spending time with 2 completely parallel running storylines that in my eyes don't really have anything to do with each other. And it just feels like with this episode is doing a little bit too much. There are some cool elements, like this thing with the time window, the holodeck. That's a cool idea, and the scene is good. It's very emotionally intense, but also one of the scenes that's very drawn out, because you know sort of what's gonna happen. They're like doing double takes and triple takes and quadruple takes, and you're like, yeah, come on, we're getting to it. I will say the reveal at the end with Sutek is cool, especially for people who, you know, are familiar with that villain. That was a very good, dramatic, heavy reveal. I did like that. But overall, this very much feels like a setup to something else. Like, this is an episode you could arguably skip if you just want to watch the finale of this series. So, yeah. Number 6. The Empire of Death. So yes, here's the follow-up episode. The Empire of Death. the series finale. And I'm not saying this is a outright bad finale, I'm just saying it's a somewhat disappointing finale. It feels somewhat anticlimactic. Like, it has good elements. I like that Mel is there, like the Doctor's hanging out with a classic companion and with a newer companion. I like seeing that. I like the memory TARDIS, them hanging out there. It's all a bit cramped and cute, and they just sort of have to live together there. I love seeing Mel sort of like discovering some old stuff of the old Doctors that she used to hang around with, and then Sutek like infiltrates the TARDIS through her. That feels very dramatic and emotional. That's cool. I liked seeing that. I love all the stuff with Ruby's mom. That it's very emotional that Ruby's mom's just like an ordinary woman who couldn't take care of Ruby at the time and had to give her away. I love all that, and it feels very emotional. Um, I like the scene with the woman where the Doctor gets the spoon. The woman doesn't really remember that, but like also those are like only like 2 or 3 individual moments or scenes that I enjoy. But the overall package of the finale is somewhat disappointing. You know, the reveal with Sutek, but then they don't really do anything with Sutek. He's just sort of hanging around. Then it's revealed that he's apparently been hitchhiking on the TARDIS since the 70s, and you're like, how has that worked? And it makes retroactively so many things so much funnier if you think about it. And then how he gets defeated is very anticlimactic. It's just like hook him on a leash and drag him through the time vortex, and everything is fixed, and no one died. You're like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, we sort of knew that's where this was going, but it felt very anticlimactic how we get there. So not an outright bad finale, just disappointing. Number 5. The Devil's Cord. Now, this is what some people called the musical episode of Doctor Who, even though it very much is not a musical episode. It has one musical number in it, like one proper, actually out there big musical number, and it's at the very end of the episode. We just have this character of the Maestro occasionally coming in, playing some music, singing some words, and that's it. It's not a musical. It's not a musical. I think this is okay. This is an okay episode. It's solid. I'm not. This could be one of those like shenanigans-filled episodes, like just a casual episode, if it weren't for the character of the Maestro, who's made up to be this very big, special kind of character and villain. You know, one of the like related to the toy maker and all that. And I like the character of the Maestro. Right? I like the performance. It's very like out there and campy and charismatic, but in a way that I personally find it still enjoyable. And you can tell that the actress performing the character is having a lot of fun with playing the Maestro. So I think that character, they're all right. I had fun with them. I love the like visual design of that episode. The costumes are great. Ncuti Gatwa in that suit with a big afro looks amazing. Love it. But then this has also been sort of hyped up as like the Beatles episode. Like we see the Beatles, like the travel to the 60s and Abbey Road and all that. But then the Beatles have nothing to do with anything that's happening really. They're just there to show, oh, music's been disappearing from the world, and then they randomly show up at the end to help the Doctor save the world, even though they were not there at all in any way, shape, or form. Again, it was more. I'm not angry at this episode, but I'm just sort of disappointed because I'm usually a big fan of like the historical episodes of Doctor Who, especially when they include famous people of the past. And then they don't really do that. Like, I feel like they made this episode unnecessarily big, like with the Maestro and all that, while this could have just been a fun shenanigans-filled episode. It has fun elements. I could very well see myself rewatching it. It's just dragged down by minor things that I personally find a little disappointing. Number 4, Boom. Now, I think when I watched it first, I don't think I would have thought that I would put it this highly on a ranking. This is very much the bottle episode of this series. It's really just the Doctor stuck on a mine for 45 minutes, not being able to move. We're just in that crater. This episode, like the highlight of this episode, is basically Ncuti Gatwa just acting the hell out of this. And this is really the episode where he gets to show off what he's good at. What he's good at is being the Doctor. especially if you consider like how restricted he is in his movement, that he's basically not allowed to move at all, and his doctor, how he portrays him, is like very big with the gestures and all that, but it's all just happening in the face. And what he does with the script as he's been given in this episode is fantastic. Like, you're really feeling for him in this episode. And I also enjoy some of the elements and topics that get brought up in this. You know, the reveal that's brought in isn't necessarily like a big reveal. You can sort of tell what's going to happen relatively early on, where, you know, it's like there isn't actually a war. It's just like two, from what I remember, like two companies basically, just like two sides basically playing off against each other, so that one side will think there's a war even though there isn't. It's very much like commercialized war and warfare. Which I think is a very topical theme of today, I think. Then also like the ambulance, I think, is an interesting concept, you know, that they, again, capitalize and commercialize insurance, they capitalize health, that capitalism is evil. We all know that, but, you know, that this is all about, you know, are you worth saving? Like, the ambulance will look at you and is like, oh, is it still profitable for us to save you, or would it just be easier to outright kill you? I like that. Some good concepts. Honestly, the some issues I have with this episode are mostly like minor and character related. Like, there's a kid in this episode that I find somewhat irritating, especially since she's played by a girl who seems to be older than what the character is written as, and that's very irritating. Like, she was outright annoying in some bits. Ruby, unfortunately doesn't do as much as I would hope, and then she just gets shot and lies around for the last bits of the episode. We get like this random well, not really relationship, but crush between the two soldiers who are there. Also feels a bit random. I do like the femme soldier, though, that's there to show up and to at first be like, hey, who are you? And then she sort of like has to turn around to see what's actually been going on, and then she helps. I like her. She's a good secondary character, I think. So this is honestly, I think, a really good, like, solid episode. I'm personally a big fan of like bottle episodes, and I think this is very much an episode that would benefit from a rewatch. I think there's a lot going on there. Good episode. I think it's honestly just dragged down by like some minor flaws, but overall, a good episode. Now, the next two, number 3 and number 2, I wasn't quite sure how to place them. Like, if you asked me on a different day, I would switch them around maybe, and this is also now very much based on just what I personally enjoy more when I watch Doctor Who. Like, very personal opinion. So, if I switched those around, I wouldn't be angry, and if you asked me on a different day, I would. But for now, that's where we are. So, number 3... Dot and Bubble. Dot and Bubble surprised me, because I honestly didn't think, when I watched the previous forward, I honestly didn't expect that I would enjoy it that much. I was like, oh, it's like a Dr. Light episode, just after we had a Dr. Light episode. And like the setting isn't all that interesting, like just like this futuristic town, and with like teenagers being rich and annoying and being into social media and all that, and there's some weird looking slug monsters who I hate. They give me nightmares. Thank you for that, nightmare fuel. But then we all know what the draw of this episode is, and it's so clever. I just love it. Obviously, I'm watching this as a white person, and if you now go back and watch the episode, I just love how many signs there are, basically from the first minute, that the issue or the theme of this episode is going to be racism, and that we're following a white supremacist society. Like, that theme is basically out there from the very beginning. Like, as soon as the Doctor shows up for the first time and gets blocked by the girl, but Ruby, a white girl, does not get blocked immediately, it already starts right there. And tiny bits like this are throughout the entire episode, and I think it's going to be interesting to show this episode to people who are not as familiar with Doctor Who, or who are... it's just going to be interesting to show this episode to people, and just wait for them to see when are they going to pick up on what the theme is. Obviously, I'm assuming people of color would pick up on this much, much earlier, but for someone like me, who is white, who comes from a place of privilege, This probably took me much longer to recognize the first time I watched it than someone else would have. It probably took me almost half of the runtime of the episode to be like, oh yeah, okay, no, I see what we're doing. And I think that's so interesting to have this as a concept, and to have as a concept a main character of an episode that is an outright racist twat. Like, she is the worst. At first, the episode is sort of trying to be like, oh, she's like a nepo baby and she's entitled and a stupid teenager. And as the episode goes on, you're like, oh no, she's actually outright despicable. And we see this through multiple interactions. I also like this dynamic that she has with this one boy character who comes in to save her, and they purposefully so create a chemistry that's very similar to Doctor and Companion. But basically, if Doctor and Companion were racists. And then we see her like going right off the deep end, and it's all about self-preservation. It's all about yourself. Everything that's ever so slightly different, everything or everyone that's ever so slightly off the norm of what you know is wrong, deserves to not live. And we see that when she betrays the boy who initially saved her. And then we get this final scene where the main girl encounters the Doctor and Ruby for the first time in person. And this final scene is, I think, deservedly so, one of the best finishing scenes we've ever seen in a Doctor Who episode. Like, this interaction between the Doctor and this girl is so frustratingly heartbreaking to watch. It's to just see the Doctor fully realizing that these people do not want his help just because he happens to be a black man. And I just love how this is played. Like, Ruby is just standing there, like, sort of off the side, feeling very awkward and uncomfortable, not knowing what to say, what to do. And then you just see the Doctor there who sees who these people are, who doesn't like them. But then he is the Doctor, and he will still try to help them. And he just begs them to come with him so that he can say, like, he doesn't care that they hate him because he's black. He just wants to save them. He doesn't have to like them. He just wants them not to die, because that is who he is. And for those people to look him straight in the eye and to be like, we don't want your help because you're black. And they turn around and leave, knowing that, or not knowing, that they are probably going to die in the near future because they didn't accept his help. And then seeing how Ncuti plays this frustration Doctor has as he watches those people leave. Like, it's all silent without dialogue, but he just watches them, and then I was out of like disbelief because he can't grasp what's happening. He just like at first has like this manic laugh, and then he screams in anger, and then he cries because he just doesn't know what he could do to help them, and has to realize he can't because they don't want his help. It's so impactful, I think. It's so impactful. And it's a scene that I still think about. And honestly, this is one of the episodes that might not be great because it has a great story or great character building. No, this is an episode that's simply great because it has great theming. It has a great final moment that wraps up everything this episode has been ramping up towards. So yes, that's Dot and Bubble on number 3. Number 2, Rogue. Okay, so that's probably a surprise to some people. And again, I said if I swapped this with Dot and Bubble, I wouldn't be angry. This is more of a personal bias coming through because I'm a fan of, first, of historical episodes of Doctor Who, and second of all, I just love the fun, casual shenanigans episodes of Doctor Who. Those are usually some of my favorite episodes. Like, for example, one of my favorite comfort episodes to put on is The Unicorn and the Wasp. And I think this is very similar to that in vibe. This is just the Doctor and Ruby going to Regency times, encountering a handsome bad boy while some bird aliens are trying to LARP the world to death. Brilliant! Like, what more could I want from a classic Doctor Who episode. What more could I want? This is honestly all I want. I like that the Doctor just gets to have fun in this episode. I know some people don't like the Doctor having romantic entanglements. I'm usually also not the biggest fan of it. But in this case, I'm gonna make an excuse because I just like seeing this Doctor having fun. He's just out there enjoying himself. He's just encountering a handsome stranger. And he's like, I'm here to mingle. And he flirts with him. And I'm like, good for you. You have a go. Also because it's just nice to see a Doctor Who just be so outspokenly queer. And I know the show has always been queer, more or less. But it's just nice to, like, unambiguously see that, especially within the character of the Doctor. Like, the Doctor has had same sex or same gender kisses before, but not like in this kind of capacity, like very, very, very obviously feels romantically and sexually attracted to a person of the same gender, and then they kiss on screen. That's just great to see. And Rogue, I think, is a very fun character. Also, I just love Jonathan Groff. I like him. And I know some people have compared Rogue to, oh, he's like the new Jack. I'm not really seeing that, like, because Jack is like very out there and extroverted and goes out there flirting, but Rogue is much more like, he's much more introverted. He's a nerd. He tells the Doctor to bugger off essentially the first time they meet. I feel like they're honestly different characters. Like, Rogue is a different character, and I wouldn't mind seeing Rogue again in the future. Obviously, there is a teaser at the end of the episode that the Doctor might go look for him, or that Rogue might return at some point in the future. I hope he will. When will he come back? RTD, tell me. So, just yeah, the chemistry between Rogue and the Doctor in this episode is so much fun to see. Just the Doctor having fun. Yes, Ruby does get sidelined in this episode quite heavily, because, well, it is focusing on Rogue and the Doctor, so Ruby gets sort of stuck with talking to some of the secondary characters of the episode, and that's mostly it. And then she's used for the final showdown, you know, with the bird people. Yes, I will admit that Ruby does get sidelined there. The bird aliens, they're okay. I quite like the design on them, and if you watch some behind the scenes stuff, they did a lot of makeup work on the actors to make them look like that. And honestly, for a villain of the week alien, works quite well. The only issue I have with them is that they're calling it cosplaying, what they're doing, even though what they're doing is, strictly speaking, LARPing. But I do like that this episode has this theme of, you know, people dressing up and pretending to be someone else, because that's essentially what the Doctor and Ruby are there to do, you know, be Bridgerton, and they very much call out Bridgerton. Maybe one or two times too many, but it's alright. It's very much intended to be like, oh, hey, look, we're doing like sort of a contemporary media thing, which is something Doctor Who has done before, so I don't mind that. And, you know, Rogue obviously is also a character about, you know, pretending to be someone else that he isn't. He's got like a mysterious past with someone else. Now he's trying to move on. He's got his name from D&D, a game which is all about role-playing, pretending to be other people. So there is a theme in this episode, which I quite like. And overall, it's just fun. It's just a fun episode. I just love Doctor Who episodes that are just there to have fun. To just be there and do shenanigans. And I love that. That's honestly all I want from a good casual Doctor Who episode. And Rogue gave me that. Does it deserve number 2? In my very personal opinion, obviously it does. But yeah, of course, I see that some people very much rank this episode lower. But I mean, this is my personal opinion. I'm just here for the fun shenanigans. So Rogue gets number 2. And for number 1, 73 yards. Now, I would not have expected this would end up at number 1. Multiple reasons. This is a Dr. Light episode. I'm usually not the biggest fan of Dr. Light episodes. Some of them are very good, I will say. Like Turn Left, for example, great episode. I'm one of the few people, I think, who I don't hate Blink. I think it's good. I just don't think it's one of the best episodes of the show. Was that a hot take? Are people gonna hate me now? Probably. But yeah, I'm usually a bit wary of Doctor Light episodes because, I'm watching Doctor Who to see the Doctor. That's what we're here for, right? He's the one I'm tuning in for. And up until that point, I hadn't really vibed with Ruby yet all that well. I was sort of like, okay, yeah, she's fun, I guess, but I'm not really feeling anything for her. This episode changed that. And I think that's why it's where it is in the ranking, because this episode made me care for Ruby at a point where I was mostly neutral about her. And then this episode came out and I was like, yep, no, you got me. I understand who this character is now, I care for her, and I've made a connection with her. Because there's the moment, and I point this out in my review, the moment where this happens is the one moment this episode manages to make me cry. And I haven't cried at any other point during this series. And it happened in 73 Yards that I did. Namely the moment where Ruby wants to confront the entity, the strange woman, together with her mum. Their mum says, I'm going to be on the phone, I'm going to go talk to that woman. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen, I'm just going to find out what's wrong. And Ruby's mum goes to the strange woman. She whispers something in her ear, and then Ruby's mum runs away. Ruby, of course, terrified, follows her mum, but her mum wants nothing to do with her anymore. And then what follows is Ruby desperately trying to keep that connection with her mum, staying outside the house, and the locks get changed, and Ruby just absolutely gutted because she's losing her mother, and her mother saying something along the lines of, no wonder your bio mum didn't want you or something, and it got me. It, honest to God, got me. In the field. Made me cry. Also because I feel like that, to me personally, as someone who has BPD and has a lot to deal with, the fear of abandonment, the fear of loss, losing a loved one, like a loved one cutting me off or something. This was a central theme to this episode. And then seeing this happen to Ruby with her mother resonated on such a personal, emotional basis with me that it was just like, okay, I get it. I get what Ruby is feeling right now. And that was sort of the connection I needed to really feel for her as a character. And I like that this episode sort of mixes a couple of different themes together. It very much is at first very mysterious and sort of gothic-y and horror-esque, because to Ruby, this entity, this strange woman, is mysterious and terrifying because she doesn't know who this is and what's going on, and the Doctor isn't there to help her, so she's just sort of trying to figure it out on her own, and she settles back into her own life, but then loses her family because of that strange entity. And then we just follow her through the years as she tries to live her life with this strange woman always nearby, always 73 yards away, which is, as we later find out, 73 yards is sort of where the perception filter of the TARDIS stops, which is not an explanation, but I think an interesting detail. Kate makes an appearance in this episode as well, showing us how harmful this entity, or how strong this entity can be, that even UNIT can't do anything about it and isn't able to help Ruby. Then we get this character of the Welsh Prime Minister, arguably a bit out of left field. He's just there to so we have a villain. We don't really learn all that much about it, but I did like that Ruby then uses the entity to essentially defeat the Welsh Prime Minister so he won't nuke the world. And I like it, after that the episode isn't done. After that the entity doesn't disappear. Ruby goes on to live her life, becomes old, and returns to the TARDIS near the coast where she lost the Doctor years ago. And then we get this ending, and I know for some people this is too ambiguous. Some people would want an explanation, and I think also in my review I said I'm usually someone who wants more of an explanation. And yes, part of my brain does want more of an explanation of what's going on, but at the same time, I also somewhat enjoy that the ending of this episode doesn't reveal too much, if anything. Like, we just see Ruby in her hospital bed as she's about to die, and then she sees this entity for one last time, not 73 yards away, and then it's just moving in on her, and this very final like terrifying moment, and then just cutting to the POV of the woman looking at the Doctor and Ruby as they land at the TARDIS there, implying that Ruby became the woman, or maybe not. Again, it's left ambiguous, and I understand that some people might not like that. There's also like an itch in my brain that wants to be scratched. It's shouting like, "Give me an explanation for what it all means." A part of me wants that, but a part of me is really glad that we don't have an explanation, because it just leaves enough open to interpretation that people can have their own version of what is actually going on, of what has happened. And we so rarely get that, especially in sci-fi shows, because sci-fi, of course, has the tendency to over-explain, to explain what is going on, to explain away the supernatural element with, oh, it's aliens or something, or some weird tech. But no, this does have an element of supernatural, ghosty, strange, fantasy-esque appearance that we don't really know. We get like a couple of hints of what it could be throughout the episode, but the episode never points a finger at it and says, yeah, that's it. And I like that. And I honestly didn't expect a Dr. Light episode just about the companion that stretched over such a long period of time would get such emotional reactions out of me. And I think that's why 73 Yards is my number one. Now, to wrap this up, like I said, I think it's a good series. I had a lot of fun with some of these episodes. Some of these episodes, I think, could become future favorites, and I could very well see myself rewatch, either because I think they're so interesting or because they're just good fun. Like Rogue, for example, good fun, or something like Dot and Bubble and 73 Yards, because they are thinking episodes. They're a thinker, so you might want to rewatch them on that basis. So there's some really strong writing in terms of like the theming in some of these episodes, which I like. The biggest issue I have with this series, and this is the one thing I want to talk about here, is not enough episodes. We only get 8 episodes this series, and that is not enough. Doctor Who needs the 12, 13 episodes season. Like, it just needs that. We're so used to it, and the format of the show depends on this kind of episode pattern, because like one of my major complaints was we don't have enough just like fun, casual shenanigans episodes. The only one we have is Rogue and Space Babies, arguably, but Space Babies is also like the series opener. We only get like essentially two, just like casual, normal shenanigans episodes. And normally we get more of those. And those episodes are usually good for like, building the character of the Doctor or the character of the companion, or to build the chemistry between Doctor and companion. Because this is what I was sorely missing. I totally love the chemistry between the actors, and I believe that Ruby and the Doctor are friends, but, when towards the end of the series they go on about, I love you and you're my best friend, and you're like, cool, would have been great if we had seen some of that chemistry a bit more, because we didn't get enough moments of them just like being friends, hanging out. And that's because we only have 8 episodes. And while I do love some of the very experimental and thoughtful writing that we got, it's also just nice to not have a special or experimental or super serious episode every week. Like, it needs to be broken up by some just like lighter episodes, some more casual, some more nonsensical episodes. Like lowbrow episodes, or whatever you want to call them. The series is seriously missing that, and I just think the show needs that again. Like, I don't mind waiting for a longer time if it means we have a longer series. Like, I honestly do not mind that. Heck, I lived through the entirety of the Sherlock runtime. You know how long I always had to wait for new episodes then? So I wouldn't mind if I had to wait like 2 years for a new Doctor Who series if it means we get 12 or 13 episodes. Because I think the series does need that. But overall, I think Series 14/Season 1 was an enjoyable episode. good outing for Ncuti Gabwa's Doctor. I think he's off to become many people's favorite Doctor. He's certainly... Could he be in my top 5? Who knows, maybe. Again, if you want me to do a Doctor ranking, put it down in the comments below. But what you can also put down in the comments below is your thoughts on this series. What did you think of Series 14/Season 1? You can put your own ranking down in the comments below if you want. Tell me what were some of your favorite episodes in this series, and if you agree with my overall ranking. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done it already, and I'll see all of you very soon. Goodbye.